A family car brings its own special set of requirements. You want it to be comfortable, having it easy to drive is added bonus, and you also need some space inside for all of those belongings that tend to accumulate during family life. Now, these days the family car segment is dominated by crossovers and SUVs, and if you think of crossover, you probably imagine Nissan Qashqai. It's now here in its new generation, offering the same space and versatility that it always did, but with a bold new look and some clever new engines. We've also got the Skoda Karoq. Now, Skoda has an ever-expanding range of SUVs, and the Karoq occupies a kind of middle ground, so it should technically be the right car for everyone. And finally, we've got the Dacia Jogger, which occupies not only a traditional MPV style shape, but also brings 7-seater versatility and a new hybrid engine, which could make it even cheaper to run than it was before. We're going to see what each of these three cars has to offer, and whether or not each of them can slot into your family life. Though the Jogger might not be quite as upright and SUV-ish as the other cars here, Dacia has managed to put in some interesting features to help brighten up the overall design. The headlights, for instance, have a really intricate design, and I think they look great. And you might notice that at the front and rear of the car, you've got Dacia's new logos too. I also like the fact that the Dacia has plenty of glass, which makes the cabin a little bit brighter, while the tailgate opens nice and high, so it is easier to get things inside. The new Nissan Qashqai still looks, well, like a Qashqai. It's upright and it's quite chunky, but it's been given these new, sharper headlights which give it a more futuristic appeal. And the chrome front grille area frames the Nissan badge, so it's a little bit more impactful than before. It's also quite nice to have these chrome accents on this version, as well as the chrome roof bars. The Skoda Karoq looks far more grown up than it used to, and in fact the design of it follows more closely to that you'll find on the larger Kodiaq. It actually looks like quite a big car. It's accentuated through this somewhat boxy design, which makes it look quite well off-road ready, even though, let's be honest, the Karoq isn't a car designed primarily to be taken off-road. Of course, being a relatively budget-focused model, you're not going to find some of the highest end materials inside the cabin of the Jogger, but Dacia has done well to liven up the look of the place with some nice features. So I like this textured material up here, which breaks up the plastic, and I also like the leather effect steering wheel, which helps to just lift the overall appeal of the car. But the fundamentals are really good. The seats are nice and comfortable. I've got two reasonably sized cup holders in the middle, and there are plenty of cubbies for all those loose odds and sods that tend to turn up when you are driving just day to day. This hybrid version even has a natty digital screen ahead of it, which seems quite a big departure for Dacia in general. There's also a central screen, and you still get CarPlay, so you can connect your phone easily via the cable, although you do have to put the cable up here, which I always find just to be a bit of a pain. In the middle seats you've got plenty of space, and because of the boxy nature of the Jogger's design, there's a decent amount of headroom, so even taller passengers are going to be able to get comfy back there. The rearmost seats, again, are more like occasional chairs, but they're quite easy to access, and it's just good to have the added flexibility of having 7 seats in general in a car that you might not expect to have 7 seats. When it comes to boot space, you're getting 212 litres of room even when all the seats are in place. So even if you've got everyone inside the car, you've still got enough space for some soft bags or at least a decent amount of shopping. But the real bonus part comes when you look at the Jogger's boot space. You can lift out those rearmost seats, and they're actually quite light to pick up, and you can store them elsewhere. And then when you lower the middle seats, you've got 2,085 litres of room. So if you're going to do tip runs, if you're going to move house, or if you've just got loads of big stuff that you need to move about, then the Jogger is a great option. The interior of the Qashqai has a nice mix of hard-wearing materials that are going to stand up to daily use, and some finer materials that help to lift the overall feeling of the cabin. So we've got this nice leather effect stitch on the wheel, we've got this stitching down here on the sides, but then we've got some harder plastics in the areas that matter, like the cup holders, so they're going to be easy to wipe clean if you happen to spill something, and let's be honest, everyone always spills something in there. In the middle we've got a large central screen, and I like the fact that we've got quick shortcuts for the map systems and for changing the song track. You've also got physical controls for the volume, and as we've always mentioned, that's much easier than having it centered in the screen where it can just be a little bit fiddly. This Qashqai and all Qashqais get a nice digital setup ahead of you, and they're nice and clear and easy to read, though it might have been nicer if they'd used some slightly brighter colours rather than just black and red, but they're clear, so they're doing the job. In the rear seats, we've got plenty of space, and the rear doors open to 90 degrees, so for getting car seats inside and out, That's much easier because you've just got so much more aperture to work with. Then when it comes to boot space, we've got a healthy 504 litres of room back there, so it's certainly on par with rivals, and it's nice and easy to access, and there's not too much of a lip either. The interior of the Karoq has some really nice features, but what shines through more than anything else is the level of build quality here. Everything feels really sturdily put together, but on top of that we've got some nice soft touch elements here and here, and I like the quilted seats on this version, though it is a sport line, so you are going to have to pay slightly extra to get this trim with these large bucket seats. In the middle there's plenty of legroom, and there is also plenty of headroom thanks to a relatively boxy shape, though there is a little bit of a transmission tunnel in the middle seat, so that person who's sitting in between the two people either side is going to find themselves a little bit squashed up, though I'm pretty sure it'll be fine for most occasions. When it comes to boot space, you've got 520 litres to play with, which is very respectable for this size and shape of car. And you can extend it to 1,630 litres by lowering down the rear seats, and that's really easy to do thanks to levers at the side. As you might have seen from our full review of the Dacia Jogger, which you can check out on the Motors.co.uk YouTube channel right now, I really quite like this car. I like how honest it is, I like that it's nice and easy to drive, and I like that it's pretty comfortable too. This version that we're in today is slightly different to that one that we looked at initially, however, because it's the new hybrid version, which takes a naturally aspirated 1.6 litre petrol engine and adds in some electric motors and a very small battery to help reduce emissions and add a little bit of extra power. You still only get 136 brake horsepower, which isn't a lot, and that means 0 to 60 comes in just over 10 seconds. It is quite noisy, this engine, that's the only thing I would say, but you can drive it really calmly and it helps tone down the overall effect. Also, during daily driving, I've been seeing 53 mpg without really trying, so I reckon you could extend that even higher. It's a very efficient car, and it also appears to be generating its own fuel. I just keep driving it around and no fuel keeps going down. As a family car, I think the Jogger makes loads of sense. Of course, against something like the Qashqai, it's much lower down, but I think that makes it easier to get in and out of, and easier to live with overall. For instance, if you're loading a buggy in and out, you can just pop it straight in rather than having to lift it up and in. Also, just having that flexibility of 7 seats means that if you do need to take some extra people, say to the pub, or you need to take a group of kids to their sports lessons or swimming lessons, then you've just got that added space to get everyone in should you need to. As I've said before, those rearmost seats are a little bit on the small size, but certainly as occasional use chairs, I think they're really good. And the good thing about the Jogger is that it remains comfortable whichever type of road you're travelling on. Of course, you get a little bit of roll, it just feels quite soft and a little bit lollopy, but that is kind of what you want from a family car. You want it to be comfortable and you just want it to get along with the road you're driving on, and that's what the Jogger does. Plus, I will add that this hybrid version comes with an automatic gearbox, so if you're doing shorter journeys around town and if you're often crawling through traffic, then you might want this one over the manual. The Jogger also just represents excellent value for money. Of course, in the used market, you're going to be able to find some great deals, but brand new, we're talking just about £23,000 for this hybrid version, and I think that's spot on. You're getting so much practicality and so much room for very little outlay, and if that means you get to do more adventures because you've got more money to spend on them, then you could argue that's a very good thing. The Qashqai has, of course, been the go-to option in the family car crossover segment for quite a while now. You can see why. It combines a good amount of space with low running costs and some nifty features that make them a little bit more family focused than other cars in the market. Compared with the Skoda that we've got here, I wouldn't say that the Qashqai feels quite as solid, but certainly there are some really nice attributes that you've got here. The car that we're in today is powered by a 1.3 litre turbocharged petrol engine, and we've got a 6-speed manual gearbox in here, which is actually quite nice because it's quite refreshing to have a manual gearbox in a car of this size. Though if you're doing longer journeys or if you're queuing in traffic, then we'd probably trump for the automatic version instead. Of course, Nissan does its clever e-power full hybrid version of the Qashqai, but even with this 1.3 litre mild hybrid, you're still going to get around 44 mpg, so it's not going to cost the earth to run, definitely. One of the best parts of the Qashqai experience has pretty much always been the steering. That's what made the first generation car so successful, is because it was still relatively interesting to drive, and I'd say that's largely carried through to this latest version. It is quite light, that's what I will say, but lightness often brings a sense of ease of use to the steering, and certainly when you're around town, you're going to find that really handy because it's going to make the whole car easier to position, darting through traffic or just reversing into a space. This 1.3 litre petrol engine is a touch agricultural, I will say, and you do have to rev it to make the most of it. Certainly in the lower gears it feels a little bit bogged down, and it's a bit kind of like you're waiting for it to get to go. You kind of want it to carry on going. But if you're clever with your gears and you make sure that you're just thinking ahead a little bit, Nissan claims that you should be able to get 0 to 60 miles an hour in around 9.3 seconds, so it's on the money for the segment, and it certainly feels brisk enough for most occasions. Again, what I quite like about the Qashqai is the level of glass that you've got in here. It feels nice and bright and airy, and despite not being an overly large car, you get a nice high riding position in the Qashqai. I will say though that the rearward visibility is a little bit tight. There's a slightly letterbox style rear screen, and that just means that when you're looking at the back, there's just not as much there as you might expect. And remember, of course, that we have done a full review of the Nissan Qashqai, so if you'd like a slightly more in-depth look at this car, then you can head on over to the Motors.co.uk YouTube channel right now, where you'll find a full breakdown. Compared with the other cars here, the Karoq occupies kind of middle ground, I guess you'd say. It sits within that very popular mid-size SUV segment against cars like the Seat Ateca and the Volkswagen Tiguan. The Karoq delivers a really nice driving experience though. It's very assured, it feels quiet, and it feels refined actually. That's the biggest takeaway you can have in this car. The model that we're in today is powered by a 2-litre turbocharged diesel engine, which actually has 4-wheel drive in this version. So it's a great option if you often get bad weather in winter, or you just like a little bit of extra traction when things get slippery. You've got an automatic DSG gearbox in here too, and that's nice and smooth, it's easy to use, and you can take control of it via the paddles behind the steering wheel, but I find actually I just leave it in auto most of the time and just let it do its thing. You get a nice high driving position too, so you've got a good view of the road ahead, and that's the reason why people are attracted to this segment so much. A higher driving position often inspires a little bit of confidence, but let me know in the comments what you think. Do you find that driving a bigger car makes you feel slightly more confident, or do you prefer something a bit lower down? I personally prefer a car that's lower down, but I can still appreciate the fact that a car like the Karoq gives you just that nice view of the road ahead and elevates you up, so you've just got, particularly when you're in traffic, you can just see a little bit further ahead than you would do in a normal car. And remember, if you'd like to find out more about the Skoda Karoq, then you can check out our full review, which is currently on the Motors.co.uk YouTube channel. In all honesty, all three of these cars would make for very fine family vehicles. I think if you're looking for space on a budget, the Jogger makes a great deal of sense. And of course, it's got that 7-seater versatility, which means it's got something else to offer in this segment. And it means that if you are infrequently taking big groups of people, or even just taking the kids to school and want a little bit more space, then it's got that extra area to offer. The Qashqai, well, it continues to be a really great option in this segment. And certainly, you wouldn't be disappointed if you had the keys to it. I like the fact that the rear doors open really wide, and that helps to load car seats in and out, and it's also got a spacious boot and a very refined engine setup too. But for me, I really like the Karoq simply because it has all of those premium features that make everyday life just a little bit nicer, but it also feels very solid and easy to drive. However, as I've mentioned, each one of these cars would in their own right prove a great option as a family vehicle, and it's definitely worth checking each one out. Thank you for watching this Motors.co.uk 3-car comparison on the Skoda Karoq, the Nissan Qashqai and the Dacia Jogger. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, leave us a like below and let us know in the comment section what you think of these 3 cars. Which one would you be taking the keys home to? Would it be the Skoda, the Nissan or the Dacia, or something else entirely? Let us know underneath this video. And since you're here, please remember to subscribe to the Motors.co.uk YouTube channel, and if you hit that bell icon, you'll get a notification each time we upload a new video.